It started with a blocked driveway. I was already running late for a critical presentation when I found Patricia Thompson, the HOA's self-appointed security officer, parked in front of my house. She smirked, flipping through her clipboard. "You have 3 violations," she declared. Holiday decorations left up too long, trash bins visible last Tuesday, and grass 2 inches over regulation height. I stared at her. "Patricia, I don't have holiday decorations. My bins were inside, and I mowed 3 days ago." She tapped her watch. "You can dispute them at next week's HOA meeting." I checked my phone, 15 minutes until my presentation. "Move your car, or I'm calling the police for false imprisonment." Her smirk vanished. She slammed her car into drive. This isn't over. She was right. It was only the beginning. That night, I started digging. A quick check of county records revealed something shocking. Our HOA's legal incorporation expired 5 years ago. Every fine, every rule, every violation since then, completely illegal. Before I could act, my doorbell rang. My elderly neighbor Tom, soaking wet from the rain, held out a stack of papers. "They're fining me $500 for my grass being too tall," he whispered. I was in the hospital. My lawn service couldn't get in because Patricia blocked my driveway. I clenched my fists. This wasn't just about me. It was bigger. Tom and I dug deeper. What we found was worse than we imagined. The original HOA boundaries didn't even include his house or 5 others. Patricia had been enforcing rules on properties outside the HOA's legal limits. I visited the county records office the next morning. Betty, the clerk, pulled up our HOA's paperwork. Her eyes narrowed. "Honey, these signatures don't match. And this notary stamp? Fake." She handed me copies of everything. "Be careful. HOA boards do crazy things when their power is threatened." That night, I noticed Patricia's car idling down the street. Watching, I called a secret meeting. 20 neighbors packed into my garage, whispering their stories. They threatened to lean on my house over my wheelchair ramp. "Mrs. Robinson said," her hands shaking, "they're making me repaint my house because cloud cream isn't the right shade of white." Jeff, the art teacher, muttered. Maria clutched a box of violation notices. "They fined me for my late husband's memorial garden." Then came a knock on the garage door. "Security check." Patricia's voice rang out. Neighbors ducked behind shelves. I stepped outside, forcing a smile. "Can I help you, Patricia? We've received reports of suspicious gatherings." I leaned against the doorframe. "Care to point out where in the bylaws that's a violation?" Her face turned red. "Watch yourself. Things have a way of happening to troublemakers." That night, my security camera caught a shadowy figure slashing my power lines. Armed with proof of fraud, I stormed into the next HOA meeting. Patricia sneered. "Here to dispute your violations?" I smiled. "Actually, I'm here to discuss your violations." I projected county records onto the screen. "The HOA legally expired 5 years ago. None of you have authority over this neighborhood." Gasps filled the room. Patricia's mask cracked. "This is slander. The HOA is real." I held up documents from the state. The signatures were forged. And funny thing, every contract you awarded when a company's owned by your family. Linda, Patricia's assistant, stood up. "It's true." Patricia paled. "Linda, sit down." Linda held up a USB drive. "Not after what I found." The room exploded. Neighbors who had once been silent now shouted. "You stole from us. My fines paid for your Mercedes?" Then, flashing lights filled the parking lot. Police officers stepped inside. "Patricia Thompson, you're under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and harassment." She screamed as they cuffed her, but no one lifted a finger to help. By morning, Patricia was all over the news. The HOA dissolved instantly. Home values didn't drop. They rose once people realized they were free from her tyranny. Neighbors who once avoided each other now gathered for coffee. Mrs. Robinson's wheelchair ramp stayed. Maria's garden flourished. Jeff painted his house whatever color he wanted. Patricia? She tried to move to a fancy gated community. They rejected her application. For the first time in years, our neighborhood felt like a real community. The war was over. And we won.